Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Simply Great, where I talk about all things faith and lifestyle. And in today's video, I will be talking about obedience to the flesh versus being obedient to God, pretty much how to be obedient to God and how to be disobedient to your flesh. So I'm just going to jump straight into this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at simplygreat_. So in Ephesians 4:22 through 24, God specifically tells us to put off the old man and put on the new man. So, what the old man is, it's pretty much our flesh. It's tied to our flesh, our old ways of living before we came to know Christ. And the new man is tied to our spirit, the Holy Spirit that now lives inside of us as we have given our lives to Christ. So, why does God tell us to put off the old man and put on the new man? God tells us this because of what is produced from the old man and what is produced from the new man. So I'm going to read off pretty much what the fruits of the old man, which is our flesh. So the fruits of the flesh is. So that's what I'm going to read off. Pretty much it says the old man is corrupt according to deceitful lust, bitterness, wrath, anger, glamour, and evil speaking, inordinate affection, fornication, uncleanliness, evil, sexual desire, jealousy, blasphemy, and lying. And so many other things stems from our flesh, which is the old man. Now, and that is why God tells us to put it off. And what stems from our spirit, which is what God tells us to put on, which is that new man, this is what stems from our spirit: bowels of mercy, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long suffering, patience, forgiveness, love, peace, thankfulness, and gratitude. This is what stems from our spirit, and this is why God tells us to put it on, because these are the types of fruit that you actually want to be producing in your life. You don't want to be producing the fruits of your flesh, right? So, because we are in the flesh, right? We're in the flesh, but we have the spirit now living inside of us. There's this tug of war battle, right? Sometimes, whenever you're faced with decisions, you have to come to a conclusion of like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to be obedient to my flesh, or am I going to be obedient to my spirit? And you would think that our go-to answer would be, I'm going to be obedient to God because that's the type of fruit that I want produced in my life. But in real life, a lot of us constantly find ourselves being disobedient to God, but being obedient to our flesh. So, why is it hard for us to be obedient to God? So, I'm going to summarize a section of Exodus chapter 2, which I feel like answers this question perfectly. So, in Exodus chapter 2, there was a new Pharaoh, and he saw that the Israelites were increasing greatly in number. So, what he did was that he told the Hebrew midwives to kill every male child that was born and to save every female child that was born. So, this would have been a hard decision for the Hebrew midwives to make because they would be killing innocent children. Their mindset could have looked like this: it's either kill or be killed. Either they kill those innocent children, or they themselves would be killed if for disobeying Pharaoh. So they were faced with this hard decision, but there was one thing that made their decision easier to make. It was the fact that they feared God. They feared God, and in fearing him, they disobeyed Pharaoh and they saved all the male children. And out of their obedience to God, God built them houses, and the Israelites continued to increase in number. So, in reading this story, you recognize how they were actually able to be obedient to God. It is because they feared him. And it says it clearly in Exodus 2 that they feared God. So, what does it actually mean to fear God, right? So, to fear God means it's a combination of two things. It's a combination of fear and it's a combination of respect. So, let's talk about this fear aspect. By fearing God, I recognize the authority that he holds, right? God is the author and creator of this universe. Through him, I have life. He died on the cross for my sins. God is omnipresent. He knows everything, he sees everything, and he hears everything. He's the King of kings and the Lord of lords. So when the Hebrew midwives looked at God and recognized the authority he holds, and they looked back at Pharaoh, they said, "Who is Pharaoh? Compared to God, you are nothing." So in fearing God, you recognize I can't just do whatever I want, because of the consequences that will come from my disobedience to God. I recognize that all the decisions that I make better align up with God's will, his spirit, and his character, or else out of fear, I don't want to face the consequences of my disobedience, right? So now let's talk about this respect aspect. The aspect is respecting God for the authority that he holds. It's similar to if you have good parents or a good parent, right? You respect them for bringing you into this world, for sacrificing so much for you. So you recognize I can't just disrespect them any type of way, right? I can't disrespect them any type of way because of one fear, again, because of fear, right? Because you don't want to face the consequences of your disrespect or of your disobedience towards them. But also, it's that respect aspect. Like, I respect them for who they are, I respect them for loving me, for being there for me. So, it's that aspect of fear and respect. That is truly what it means to fear God. And that is how the Hebrew midwives were able to be obedient to God and disobedient to their flesh. So now that I covered the only way to be obedient to God is to truly fear Him, let's talk about how to be disobedient to our flesh. The only way to be disobedient to our flesh is to stop placing it on a higher pedestal than God. It says in Isaiah 66:1 that the earth is the Lord's footstool. So God is already up here and the earth is down here. It's his footstool, right? And our flesh is attached to this earth. So what I'm saying is place your flesh where it already belongs. Place your flesh on that footstool and place God on that pedestal. And that is the only way to be disobedient to your flesh, right? The Hebrew midwives could have been Their flesh could have been saying, save yourself from death, but their spirit was saying to live as Christ and to die is gain. They placed God on a higher pedestal and placed their flesh on the footstool. They weren't thinking about the consequences that they would endure for being disobedient to the flesh. They were thinking about the consequences they would endure for being disobedient to God. And that is how they were able to be obedient to him and disobedient to their flesh. And some of us, sometimes children of God, we find it so easy to be disobedient to God just because we feel like, oh, well, it won't affect us. It won't affect my salvation. I'm still going to make heaven, so does it really matter? And what I want to tell you right now is that although it won't affect your salvation, it will affect something. And when you die and face God, He's going to show you the fruit that was produced, what resulted in your disobedience towards him. So this goes into my next topic. What is produced from our disobedience to God? So being disobedient to God may not affect my salvation, but it will still affect me, right? Because I still have to endure the consequences of my sin, right? And these consequences can look like this. You'll find yourself in a relationship, let's say, a relationship that you will end up going through pain, going through heartbreak, going through all these things because you weren't obedient to God. God was telling you to leave this situation, but you still decided to pursue it. And you're going to find yourself in unnecessary pain that you would not have to endure had you just been obedient to God. And this goes the same. This situation can be applied for anything. It can be a friendship, it can be a job, it can be any type of situation. You're going to endure pain, real hard pain, that you would not have to endure had you just been obedient to God, right? So disobedience to God affects you, but it also affects the people around you because from disobedience to God, like I showed before, you will be producing the fruits of the flesh, right? You, it'll be like every single sin, every hard thing that God saved you from will be brought back into your life because you are continually being disobedient to him, right? So and if these fruits, the fruits of the flesh that we went over earlier, are what you're producing, then this is what people are seeing. And the people that are around you, the people that God has placed in your life, your co-workers, your family members, all of them, they won't make heaven because of your disobedience, right? God could have wanted to use you to draw them to God, to draw them to give their lives to God, to give their lives to him. But because of your disobedience, if you go and try to preach the gospel on your own to them, do you think any of them are going to take you seriously? They see the fruits of your life. They see that you're just like them. They see that you're producing the same things like them. You're living in sin all over again. So why would they listen to you? Why would they ever take you seriously? I know I wouldn't. So you could be the reason why somebody in your life does not make heaven out of your disobedience. And some of you can be like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It's about me. If you're that selfish, you can think, it doesn't matter, like at least I'll still make heaven. But when you recognize that the reason that you were able to encounter God was because of somebody else's obedience, you recognize the importance of it. right? A lot of us encountered God through social media, through a youth camp, through church, through a Christian song, through just like anything, or like just a street preacher, somebody coming to just share the gospel with you. A lot of us encountered God and later gave our lives to Him because of somebody else's obedience. So you recognize obedience is not just about you, it's about drawing other people closer to God and drawing others to give their lives to Him. Obedience is bigger than you, and your disobedience can affect somebody else's salvation or chance at getting into heaven. On the topic of somebody else's salvation, disobedience to God affects your calling. Okay, so you're gonna be here on earth, walking here on earth, working a job that is completely pointless, that is completely unfulfilling. You're gonna be living a life of no purpose due to your disobedience to God. And sticking on that purpose thing, we were created and we were put here on this earth for a purpose, to do the will of God. And a lot of you, because of your disobedience, are not doing the will of God. You could be wondering, Lord, what is your will for me, right? What what is the calling? What is the calling that you have placed on my life? And a lot of you will never know due to your disobedience to Him, right? You will never know the will of God due to your disobedience. It requires obedience to know the will of God, and it also requires obedience to do the will of God. So if you're wondering what your calling is, God is saying being obedient. And if you know your calling and yet you haven't put it forth and haven't put it into motion, God is saying it requires more obedience. And through your obedience, the right type of fruit is produced, right? Pertaining to you, you are drawn closer to God. You begin to reflect God, and the light that has been shining before you is no longer hidden. Everybody now sees it, and people are drawn closer to you. People want that light, and people are drawn to give their lives to Christ through you. And that pertains to somebody else's salvation. You're helping people get saved. You're living a life with purpose. You're living a life that impacts the kingdom and not this world. And a final reminder that I want to give is, although these are like some of the fruits that we'll see from being obedient to God, your obedience to God should not be dependent on your desire to see fruit, right? So let's say like you've been praying for somebody to get saved, and it just seems like they're not getting saved. You've been praying for so long. Don't stop being obedient to God through prayer for this person. Continue to be obedient to God by praying for this person. You don't stop being obedient to God because you haven't seen any fruit. The fruit produced pertaining to maybe somebody else's salvation may not always be evident, right? Or it may not come as fast as you want it to. Fruit takes time to grow, and it's the same thing. Our fruit of obedience to God and, let's say, praying for somebody else, or just hoping somebody else's get saved through us fulfilling our calling, may not always be evident. It may not always show as quickly as we wanted to, but keep being obedient. Your obedience to God should never be dependent on your desire to see fruit. Okay, so that is the end of the video. I hope you were blessed by this video and just were able to learn how to be obedient to God and how to be disobedient to your flesh. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at simplygreat_, and have an amazing day.